determination and grit to prove her mark in so many challenging fields. She has served in the Indian Air Force for 10 years as an outdoor training instructor as well in the Air Force Academy in Hyderabad. She's trained hundreds of future officers in outdoor military training, including India's first three female fighter pilots. She has 23 mountaineering and trekking expeditions in India, Nepal, Bhutan, Iran, Africa, and Russia. And she is the first woman from the state of Uttar Pradesh to climb Mount Everest in 2012, as well as the first Indian woman to climb Asia's highest volcano, Mount Damavand in Iran. A phenomenal speaker. She's delivered over 130 talks and interviews in India, USA, UK, Bulgaria, Italy, and on forums like TEDx, Toastmasters, Rotary, Wiki, Infotech, the list goes on. And what she speaks about is so important now because it's about the power of mind, it's about visualization, how to overcome fear, and so much more. She's the ambassador of India Women Empowerment Committee in World Leaders Summit Ecosystem and a brand ambassador SVEEP program of the Election Commission of India in Uttar Pradesh for the Lucknow district to generate voter awareness. Her short stories, poems, and articles on gender issues, travel, adventure sports, Buddhism, the Tibetan community, environment, and humanity are regularly published. And this is her amazing book, Beyond the Wall, Beyond That Wall, Redemption on Everest. It's been published in October 2021 and it has received the Sahitya Shri Award. And she's also the co-author of the book, Aim for the Sky and the Stars. For her outstanding achievements, she's been felicitated with 14 awards, including the Rani Lakshmi Bai Bravery Award, Outstanding Global Woman Award, Global Excellence Award, Aspiring She Power Award for Courage and Resilience, the Real Superwoman Award, and so many more. So it's such a pleasure, Tulika, to have you here with us today. We would like you to tell our viewers firsthand about your journey.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It is indeed a pleasure for me and an honor to be speaking to you and through you to your audience. So it is really delightful to be on Lucknow Farmers Market's platform. This is indeed a lovely evening here in India, and people who might be listening to us outside India also. I would like to say Namaste, Jai Hind. It is the human communication, I would say, that has bonded us all together, irrespective of our place of origin, irrespective of our religion, our culture. And that is why this dialogue that we are having today through your platform is so important, especially in today's times when we are going through a pandemic, when we have been through a lot of psychological, economic, as well as uh, social problems. So it is important that we as a community, as human race together, hold each other's hand, talk to each other, and give each other that hope that we would be able to make it no matter what. So this is a little about my inner person that I am. And as the dialogue proceeds further, we would talk more about all of us, I would say, not just about me, but the human people, the human race that we are.
Thank you, Tulika. So relevant. Tell us first about the first success that you had, about your journey in the Indian Air Force.
Well, Air Force was my dream. And as anybody, I would say that a lot of people in their teenage look up to the armed forces personnel because in addition to that charm of the uniform, the people in uniform have something special about them. And that is that aura they carry around themselves because they have trained their bodies as well as their minds. They have disciplined themselves. And that is why they exude that aura of a person who is in control, not only of themselves, but also perhaps of the situation. They can also take charge when the situation demands. They can also be responsible for other people's lives. And that is they are a team. They're not just individuals, the soldiers. So all these qualities attracted me towards joining Indian Air Force. And as I had an affinity with nature right from childhood, I suppose it was more towards the sky because I would look up at the sky and see that sky symbolizes a human life. Sky is what like what a human being shall be, endless, vast, without any boundaries, full of endless opportunities and possibilities, basically. No end and no beginning. Now, that is what our Indian philosophy also says, that our lives have no end, no beginning, na adi, na ant. So that is why I chose Indian Air Force. The journey was very eventful, I would say. It gave me a lot of opportunity to prove myself, to prove my potential in a lot of diverse fields. So first, I joined as an administrative officer, and my specialization was air traffic controlling. So I had the pleasure of controlling all sorts of planes that we have in our country, the fighters, the aircraft, transport aircraft, the choppers, so all kinds of planes that we have. And in my last tenure, I had a 10-year tenure as a short service commission officer in the Indian Air Force. So in my last tenure, I had a special privilege, and that was to be posted as an outdoor training instructor in Indian Air Force Academy, which is in Hyderabad, Dundigarh. Here, I had the opportunity to train young people, young boys and girls, and transform them into fighters, into warriors, into soldiers who are ready to take charge, who are ready to sacrifice, to take initiative, and to lead men and women who are under them, serving the country into the battle, into defending their nation. So that transformation, where one only thinks of oneself, because as human beings, we have this innate tendency to become selfish, to first think of ourselves. But a soldier is somewhat different. They do not think of themselves first. They think of the nation, they think of the goal, they think of their teammates. So that transformation, where you rise above being an individual and think in a larger perspective, I had the pleasure to be a witness to it, to be a party to it, to contribute into this transformation of thousands of the future air, air warriors and officers. So this was about my journey in Indian Air Force. I have been posted at Indo-Pakistan border, Indo-Bhutan border, as well as one posting was in Lucknow and the another was in Hyderabad. And I had the opportunity to visit all across India, work with people coming from different backgrounds because India is such a diverse country. So forces provided me opportunity, confidence, that identity which I still carry and would always carry, that squadron leader in front of my name, that has been given by the Indian Air Force, and the Constitution of India has allowed to use this prefix in front of the people, people's name who have served in the forces. So whatever I am today, I say that a lot of credit goes to my organization, that is Indian Air Force.
Amazing. And there's one thing very interesting that we were talking about earlier, where you said that the armed forces is one place where you actually have no feeling of gender. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yes. I would say, contrary to the notions in the civil society, in the defense forces, there is a lot of work parity. Of course, the pay parity is there. These are two very important terms, work parity and pay parity. So there is no favoritism, neither any discrimination on the basis of gender, I would say, to a very large extent. And the pay parity, of course, is there. Um, I, I say that I have been given opportunities as an officer and not as a woman officer. Now, there is no distinction like that. So when I was a flight lieutenant, a young flight lieutenant, I was given opportunity and work and assignments as per my rank. When I rose in the rank and became a squadron leader, my task differed as per my rank. I was given the night duties also. When I was an air traffic controller, we used to have these night flyings, and it would so happen that I would be the woman in the entire air traffic control tower, but I would be there in the capacity of a woman. I would be there in the capacity of a duty ATC officer, as an officer commanding all the men who were in my team. And there would be a minimum of 15 to 20 people at one time in my team. And I would be responsible for all the pilots in the air, all the aircraft in the air, that they are safe and there is no collision between them. So yes, to a very large extent, if I compare with the civil society, the defense forces provide that gender neutrality to a very large extent. Yes, I would admit that there are still certain spaces where we need to extend this gender neutrality, and the work is being done gradually upon it. Recently, we saw a very
Gay.
welcome step by
Manya, no,
Supreme
I'm
Court of
not
India.
gay. And then they're like, okay, but you are very handsome.
We would request everyone to please mute themselves. Yeah, please carry on.
So, there was recently a very welcome step by the Supreme Court of India, as well as the Government of India and Defense Ministry, that they have opened NDA for the girls also. So gradually we are opening up those barriers which were earlier there, because the mindset in the society is also changing. So because armed forces people also work from this society. So I see this gradual progression and this gradual mainstreaming of women in all the fields.
Absolutely. And so from, you've already scaled the pinnacle of success when you've joined the Air Force. And how did you get, interested in mountaineering, and talk to us about your journey in mountaineering now?
Yes, I have always believed, ma'am, that a human being, till the time he or she is alive, there is still much more to do in life. When we achieve one dream, there shall be more. Because if we stop dreaming, we stop living. Now, when we become comfortable in one place, that complacency comes. The growth stops when we stop challenging ourselves through new avenues. So when I already had become an officer, I thought that now what's next? I wanted to challenge my own limits. I wanted to utilize further avenues which were available to me. And it so happened that this opportunity came my way. I did we will take questions later on. Bhagwati is asking something. We will take the questions later on, and they are most welcome. So I was talking about this, getting into mountaineering. I did my basic course in 2009, and I got interested into it because, as I had already told, I have always felt that closeness with nature. Nature is one component of this universe which would tell us all the lessons that are required in life. We human beings go through a lot of emotional turbulence sometimes. We seek answers to a lot of unknown, unexplained questions in our life. A lot of things happen which we do not perhaps like at that particular time. Maybe the loss of a job, maybe the loss of a loved one, maybe the loss of an opportunity. So there are so many things which we cannot explain with our human experiences. It is in those times when nature comes with the answers to all these questions. Because in nature, we see that there is a cycle of destruction and construction. It continues without fail. So if I give an example of a tree is born through a seed. The seed grows branches, of course, the roots also. It flowers, it bears fruits, and again, it comes back to the seed. In that entire living process, it goes through various weathers. Autumn is there, the spring again comes, and then again autumn and spring. So when I observe nature, I do not feel alone in my life. I do not feel hopeless when the autumn of life comes upon me. So this affinity with nature led me to venture into mountaineering. And in 2009, I got an opportunity because Air Force itself had planned to send the women officers to climb Mount Everest, and I volunteered for it. So my contribution towards my adventure career, I would say, initially was that I did not hesitate when this huge opportunity came in front of me. I took that step forward, even though I felt that perhaps I wasn't ready for it, physically, mentally, emotionally. Still, I thought it is an opportunity and I need to give it a chance. I need to try. What if I fail? It's okay if I fail. I'm a human being. Everybody fails. But at least I would not live with the regret that when the opportunity knocked at my door, I shrank from it due to fear. That was my initial contribution. Yes, of course, later, when I continued climbing mountains, I failed on some mountains. I could not reach the peak, if we can call this a failure, but I continued. And it has taught me a lot of things in life. about persistence, perseverance, about willingness to go that extra mile, about determination, about the invincibility of human will. So that's in brief about my mountaineering journey. We'll talk more about.
And mountaineering is something that you said really teaches you about our place in the universe. Because I mean, we may think that you've achieved so much and you've done so much already. You're an Air Force officer. Now here you are, climbing to the peak. But suddenly there you are at the mercy of nature. And though you may have decided to do something, you may or may not be able to do that. So talk to us about how that journey was and how you overcome those issues. How do you find the strength within, when you are in a place where you are surmounting so many difficulties and you think that, you may not be able to go on. How do you carry on? How do you find the strength?
Yes, mountains, as we all know, we can imagine that they are a difficult, inhospitable terrain to be in. Human beings perhaps were not meant to be on the mountains, but since we have this habit to explore ourselves, to know about our own limits, which I feel are limitless, but to stretch our limits for that matter, we have always been fascinated by these places, mountains included. I include oceans in them, I include the space in them, but for me, it was the mountains. So I was driven by this desire that I want to know what lies within me. Because as human beings, I believe there is a lot of energy latent inside us. Through my mountaineering journey, I faced failure, I would say. And I came to terms with this reality that even if I try, sometimes I would fail. Because failure is a part of the process towards success. Failure is a part of that self-discovery process. So yes, I would fail. And as a human being, I would have to learn to take it, not to be bogged down by it, but to realize, to utilize this as an opportunity to look within, improve myself. Now, here is the catch. Because in our society, there's a lot of glorification of success. And in the digital media also, we hear and listen to and we see that we read the stories of people who have made billions in their lives, who have reached the pinnacle of their fields. Somebody has become the CEO of the largest company in the world. So these kinds of success stories are everywhere. Our students, and not only students, even the adult people like us, people in their elderly age, they are under tremendous pressure to figure out where they stand in this race of materialism, in this competitive race. Mountains taught me how to take these things, these failures, these temporary pauses in life. Because when I failed on Mount Everest, I would share this journey over here. In 2011, as I told you, a team of women officers was being prepared to climb Mount Everest. We were trained by a specialist in the Indian Air Force, and we were given additional time. We were given all the diet plans and everything. And the expectations were high. So a senior officer handed us over that flag of India and the flag of Indian Air Force. Go put it atop the highest mountain of the earth. And obviously, like, we were all filled with so much of enthusiasm, determination, and dreams, aspirations. When we were climbing, we climbed well, I would say. We climbed really well. And that hard work of 2 years, we had trained for 2 years. We had climbed 4 peaks already. We had been to Siachen Glacier twice for this, and we had trained for hours and hours and hours. So we did climb well when we were actually climbing Mount Everest. I was in the first team, and we made that summit push. We had already been climbing for more than a month. Now it was time to just go for the top. I was in the first team of 6 who were going for this. But it so happened that after climbing more than halfway up, I had to return from there due to a combination of factors. Now, those factors were external. I would reveal them what they were exactly at that time so that the audience can visualize. We were at 21,500 feet. Now we can imagine. If we go to Mussoorie, it is the highest point in Mussoorie is, I think, 7,000 feet. If we go to Shillong, it is about 5,000 feet. If we go to Leh, it is 10,000 feet. Now here I'm talking, we were climbing at 21,500 feet. The temperature was in -10 or -15. And it was a gloomy, cold, cloudy day. So a lot of that cold seeping within. And I felt that I could not go more than that. Now imagine this thing that you have trained for 2 long years. Everybody's expectations are there, all the eyes are on you. And then you fail. You come from halfway down. This title of my book, it says Beyond That Wall. Now there was a wall on Mount Everest. It actually exists. It is called the Lhotse Face. It's a steep vertical ice wall. But this was the wall which sent me back in 2011. And when I came back down, of course I cried. I was a human being and it was dashing of the dreams, long held dream of 2 years and the hard work of it. So I was crestfallen, but I looked within. I did not give up. Now here is the lesson. How do we take our failures? Do we leave it at that point? Or do we strengthen our resolve? Do we look within and improve ourselves? Do we blame it on the external circumstances and justify our failure and the outcome and live with it the entire life with this guilt, with this voice knowing within us, even if nobody is telling you this, you know that you have failed. You know that you would have done better. So I did not want to live with this voice not letting me sleep in the night for my entire life. And that is why I took a very unprecedented step to launch my own expedition the next year. It had not been done. It is not a very usual thing to happen in the armed forces, but I decided to take my leave of entire 1 year. So the 60 days entitlement of the yearly leave, I took in one go. And I spent all my savings at that particular time, for which I was starved as a crazy woman. I worked out day and night along with my duty. So I managed time. Time management is also a very big thing, because when we are trying to do something which is huge by normal standard, now we have to put in that much input also. It would take extra efforts. So if we are ready for that, yes, we can aim high. Along with all these things, I launched my expedition in 2012. It was a life and death situation again, because nothing in life comes easy. Everything has all these challenges and struggles, I would say, and they make the task interesting, actually. These challenges are what bring out a real matter to the fore. So again, facing all these life and death situations multiple times, I was able to stand atop Mount Everest on 26th May 2012. Now that was one moment which I would never forget in my life, because it was awe-inspiring, it was incredible, it was beautiful beyond words, and it was redemption. And that is why the subtitle of my book is Redemption on Everest. Beyond that wall, redemption on Everest. I could gain my worth in my own eyes. So if we're trying to do something, if we do it for ourselves first, there are more chances to be successful. If we do it for somebody else's sake, perhaps you would succeed, but the drive that comes from within, it might be there, it might not be there.
That's amazing. And these insights that you're giving us from your experience as a mountaineer and what you experienced, actually, these are things that apply to us in life in all fields. So is that how you got into motivational speaking? How did you start, sharing your journey? And what, you've progressed, I think, so much in the last 3 decades. It's really interesting and wonderful to see your growth. So talk to us about your motivational speaking and how you got here.
As I said in the beginning, communication is important, because if we trace the human history itself, human beings have always tried to communicate. Even when we did not know languages, different languages of the world, we tried to communicate through pictures, rock paintings, as we have in India itself, the Bhimbetka painting in Madhya Pradesh. There is Lakudiyar painting in Uttarakhand. So there are various rock paintings in various parts of the world showing that human beings have this innate urge to communicate. Communicate what? Their ideas, first thing, their feelings, second. Because a human being is a mixture of these ideas as well as feelings. We are neither machines, we are not just souls. We are both. We are bodies, we are a combination of a body, soul, as well as a heart. So we have this innate urge to connect with other people. As Rousseau had said that we are social beings. So we do not live on an island. And that is why I think my foray into public speaking has been because of this urge. What I feel is when I was a child and when I was struggling with a certain things, I required answers for a certain questions. And everybody, all of us have questions. It is good to have questions. Books gave me these answers, as well as the lives of people who had achieved something great, gave me that inspiration and a lot of answers to my questions. So that showed me that we can also learn and be inspired, take hope from others' lives. We do not have to do it all by ourselves. Sometimes it is wise to take inspiration or to take lessons from others' experiences also. So I felt that I had always been good at speaking because it comes from within. I'm not speaking just for the sake of speaking. I'm speaking what I live with. I'm speaking with conviction because these are the things that I deeply hold at my core. And I thought that God has given me this gift. I believe that all of us human beings, each one of us, is born with a unique gift in their personality. So somebody might be good at painting, somebody might be good at singing or writing or speaking like me or doing workouts perhaps, so or making a music note. So everybody is better at something than the others. We need to identify this thing. I identified that right from childhood, I was always on the stage. I loved to communicate with public at the larger stage. And we feel that not only in Indian community, in the entire world, we need this communication. If we can feel somebody's pain, and if we can genuinely say some words that console that person or give hope or inspiration to that person in that one moment, I suppose we have done something worthwhile in our life. Once I read an article about it, about suicide prevention. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yes, the article that you
All right.
read.
Yes, I read an article about suicide prevention, and a very important aspect was brought out into it. Somebody was trying to prevent somebody from jumping off a bridge. And this person said, who was trying to commit suicide, he said, why should I stop? There is nobody who cares for me. So this person who was trying to prevent said, I care. I care. These just two words, small words, that I care that you live because you are another human being, I care. Those two words, simple, but they prevented somebody's death. They gave that person that feeling of belongingness. We all human beings need that feeling of belongingness. And that is why I felt that perhaps people who are struggling in their lives, there are various struggles. We cannot reach out to everybody individually, but through the medium of communication, we have a blessing of digital media also today. I do not know who is listening to me today and who can decide that, yes, I'm not yet done with this life. I have that fire within me and I can make it. Despite all the problems, despite this lack of resources, despite the mess that I'm stuck in right now, I can still make it because there is somebody who has done it. So this kind of a connection, this kind of strengthening of each other, I wanted to do in my life. Because we, at a certain point in our lives, we shall cease to become individuals. We shall become a link in the entire human society. So I want to be that link and I want to hold hands with as many people as I can. I want to feel that connectedness. And that is why I have come into public speaking now.
That is amazing because, I think it takes the passion that you have with which that you are following your dreams and your, this amazing journey of yours, and to have the foresight to share this, with the youth particularly. I think it's such an important thing that you're doing. And particularly, I mean, I know you talk to a lot of college and to school students, and particularly about your book. So there are questions about your book. Don't worry, we're going to be opening this up to questions also. And Tulika's book was available on Amazon, and it's going to be reprinted. So talk to us now about your book and about the journey. I mean, it was a tough recovery, I think, when you came back from Everest, and that's when you started writing your book. And it's amazing because you always took adversity and you turned it into something positive.
Yes, Ram. This has happened to be one of my traits. What happened was when I was climbing Mount Everest, there was a life and death situation, as I said. And exactly on the last leg when I was climbing, I faced this dilemma of continuing or not. I had come back the previous year from that wall. Again, this year, this wall sent me back. I surmounted that wall in my second attempt. And again, there came a situation where I had to decide whether I should continue. If I continue, I am risking my life gravely. And if I go down, I might be safe, but I am risking my self-esteem. So what do I choose? At times, we have to choose our self-esteem above our bodies, above our physical existence. And only the people who can do so, rise above the physical existence, are called great. I'm not putting myself in that category. I'm just taking a lesson from the history. This is what people who have risked their mortal existence for their principles, for something great, for larger cause, only they remain alive even after their bodies are gone from this world. So that is what happened when I was also climbing to the last leg towards the tip of Mount Everest. And I decided to continue. I decided to risk my life. It was a calculated risk, of course. I do not advocate any kind of foolhardiness, but a calculated risk. And I came back with the frostbite on my hands. There was a real danger of my toes being amputated. A portion of it, yes, has gone. And I take it as my designer toe now because I'm somewhat different than the other people. And I take it as a badge of pride, that toe. It reminds me that, yes, I had that grit to continue at that point of time. So when I was in hospital for 3 months after coming back from my successful summit, I decided to, rather than complaining, write down my journey. So in those 3 months, when I was surrounded by a lot of people who were suffering, first of all, I felt their suffering, and I decided that I should write my experiences to give that glimpse of hope during that suffering to other people also. So while my toes were in a bad condition, I was not able to move because I could not put them down. They were entirely rotten, raw, and skinless. At that particular time, I wrote down my Mount Everest journey. In addition to the adventure that is there in this book, a lot of adventure. Every moment there was a life and death situation. Every moment there would happen something which would just entail that now this expedition perhaps is going to be over. Everything that I have risked is going to be wasted. So in addition to this sort of an adventure, there is also a lot of glimpse of that inner transformation that is required to reach any top, just be it of a mountain or be it in any field, the top that we want to climb. So this is what I wrote about. This book has a life of its own. I would say it was born in a hospital out of my mind. It came onto the laptop in hospital, but it came to the print after 9 years. So as a human being has this gestation period of 9 months, my book has a gestation period of 9 long years. And it's very eventful again, because at that particular time, I sent it to more than 20 publishers. And a lot of people said that nobody reads books nowadays. It is the digital media age. People prefer to see videos. And adventure books, forget it about it. Nobody reads adventure books per se. So I still have those emails on my laptop, people saying that, I'm sorry, we cannot publish this book. But I did not give up because I felt that there is substance in this book and it needs to see the day of light. It needs to be in the print. And that is why I continued trying. And then ultimately it happened after 9 years, there was not even a change of a word from what I had written. And it has been published from Delhi now, and it has done really, really well. So all those notions that people do not read adventure books, I think they have been proved wrong. So this is about this book. I'm sure that whoever wants to achieve in life more than just eating, drinking, and being merry and going from this world shall give this book a try. They would feel this kind of a resonance within themselves that it is perhaps about their story also. You might not climb a Mount Everest like me. No, we do not need to be identical. Not everybody needs to climb a Mount Everest. But in one sense, we are all actually climbing our respective Everests. We all have those Everests in our life. Perhaps it is taking care of a loved one who's not well, and it puts a lot of demand on our time as well as physical resource and financial resource. Maybe it is struggling with some kind of a relationship problem. Maybe it is raising a child. So these are all Everest in their own sense. We have all our different Everest. And at times it feels that everything is just gone to waste. All that we did in our life, that identity is lost, that hard work is gone, no results are forthcoming. How do we sustain? I would say one thing here. Human beings sustain on their will more than anything else, more than anything else. Resources in this world are regenerable. They can be held. They can be regenerated from various sources. It is the human will. If we have that, we can make it. And this is the message of this book. When you go through this book, you would find at every step, how many barriers were there? How many barriers? You know, a girl, I was 28 at that time. A girl of 28, she's an officer also. She has this responsibility to discharge a very demanding duty of being a defense officer, day and night duty. Perhaps sometimes there was night flying till 1 o'clock in the night or morning. Well, the night flying would start at 6 p.m. and would go on to the next 1 a.m. Then there would be early morning duties. So how do you find time? Sometimes we say we do not have time. Sometimes we say we do not have resources. Go through this book. I was preparing for Mount Everest, the highest object on this earth. And you would have thought that perhaps I had a dietitian with me, I had a coach with me, I had a physicist with me. No, I had none. I just had a 200 meters track, just a 200 meters track, not even 1 kilometer track, just a 200 meters track. I used to run 20 kilometers every day on that track, making it 100 rounds running in the night alone after my duty. So if one goes through this book, I think it is my gift to the humanity, to everybody who is dreaming high and who is going through life despite all odds and is trying to make it big. Not even big in that sense that we say all around us. Big means actually big. Everybody should know you. No, it is not required that everybody should know you. What is more required is that you shall be satisfied that you are utilizing your potential as a human being. So are you able to do that? Yes, there would be challenges. This book might help you in going through those difficult times.
Amazing. And you've clearly left your mark already, and there's a long way to go still for you. So it was really interesting when you, I think, were going on your expedition, and you write in your book that, you know, you went in the airport and you saw, or was it in the bookshop in Nepal, when you started looking at the books about people who've written about their expeditions. And that's actually when you visualized your name on the title of one of these books. And so it's amazing what you have already achieved. And I'm sure there's so many more achievements yet to come for you. And what about the people around you, you know, those who really helped you, who were with you side by side along the way, your two amazing Sherpas who you write about in the book, and you're now doing your PhD on the Sherpas of Nepal. Can you tell us something about that?
Yes, that's a very vital aspect that you have brought out, ma'am. The people who support us. Because as I said earlier, we do not live in isolation. They're human beings, and whoever has become successful in any field has done it with the support of a lot of people. So this gratitude is very important to have in our personality. And I would like to thank endless people for that matter, starting from my family to my colleagues who did my share of work when they were there and I was out on the expeditions, and they would encourage me. To my organization, they supported me with equipment and a lot of other support also. Though it was my money, my leave, but still they were there as a backing, and they were always there if something happened to me. Though it did happen in a way, but yes, there was a lot of support I had. Then there were people like you, I would say, though you were not there when I was climbing, but after that. So people who have acknowledged that yes, somebody has accomplished something. Now, this acknowledgement, I would say that all of us would admit when we do something and it is acknowledged, it is like a morale booster. It propels us to do even better. So there have been a lot of people who have acknowledged also. So Sherpas, if I come to them, they are the people who live in Nepal. Basically, they are nestled at the base of Mount Everest. The region is called Solukhumbu, and their villages are almost at 15,000 feet or so. You might have heard about Tenzing Norgay. We all have heard about him, of course. He's a hero. So Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, they were a team. Tenzing Norgay was a Sherpa. So Sherpa are people who assist climbers in climbing these big peaks, the 8,000 meter peaks. And because not all the load that we require on those 2-month expedition can be carried by one person. So Sherpas also carry their loads. Sherpas fix ropes. We must have seen in documentaries, sometimes it comes on BBC or something, documentaries, Discovery, that we have ropes fixed on the mountain. So in case of Mount Everest, it is Sherpas who fix those ropes. So they do a lot of work. I had 2 Sherpas with me. They're natives of Nepal, Pimba and Pema. So they were like my friends. In those 60 days when I was climbing Mount Everest, we were a one team actually. We were not individual Toleka, Pimba and Pema. We were one team. And that is why I have a lot of gratitude towards them. I felt that their voices shall also come in public. Though some people have already written about them, I thought that I could write from my own perspective. When I was climbing, I interacted with my Sherpa, who was of my age at that time. And I could see that for them, mountaineering is something different. I'm doing it out of passion or to prove myself to myself. They are doing it as an occupation. Now, are they into it by their choice, or is it a lack of choice that makes them come into this? So I tried to explore all those facets by talking to him. Whenever I climb, I just do not climb it as a physical activity. I also have my eyes on the culture around, on people, because I believe that mountains are not just a physical entity. Mountains are entire ecosystem. It also includes the flora and fauna, the people living over there, the rivers, the trees, and everything. So we have to see it as a whole. When I was talking to my Sherpa, I realized that there is a lot which is unsaid about their society, about the impact of mountaineering as a commercial activity on these people. So these are the aspects that I'm trying to bring out. I wanted to do it in a systematic manner. So I enrolled in a PhD from Baba Saheb Ambedkar Bhimrao University. It is a central university in Lucknow. And I suppose in 6 months or so, I would be able to finish this PhD. I'm right now working on it. I would also like to put one thing across here about the book, because there were many people asking about it. Yes, this book is available on Amazon right now. I have a link. In addition to it, if somebody wants to have a signed copy, you can directly contact me. So I would be able to provide you that signed copy also. I would write down my email in the chat box. So you can contact me over there, or on Instagram, you can get in touch with me. So if you want a signed copy, you can contact me. If you want a copy through Amazon, it is there available on Amazon also.
Amazing. And about the Sherpas, we were also talking about, we see always the men who are, the Sherpas who are guiding people through the mountains. So you also said you were studying and writing about the women in the Sherpa community. So I'm sure that this is going to become another book and we're going to read about this, but would you like to give a little bit of an insight into the lives of the women?
Definitely, yeah. Because women all over the world, they are required most of the times to fit into a mold. And it is considered that for women, even if now they have come out into the professional field, it's considered that their primary responsibility still is their home. And women who take up adventure sports as career, they are considered an exception, not as a norm. For men, it is much more accepted. For women, it is rather that you are an abnormal person, perhaps. Why don't you settle down? Why do you need to venture into the mountains, put your life at risk? And if you're married, more so. If you have a child, more so. There's a guilt bound on your head. There was a case of this woman climber. So she climbed K2. She was a renowned climber, and but when she climbed K2, upon descending, she met with an accident and she died. A lot of people die on mountains, and K2 is a really difficult mountain. So she died, and there was a lot of criticism on this front, that she, being a mother, did she have a right to venture into the risky sport? Now, herein, if it was a man, perhaps those questions wouldn't have been there so dramatically put, and she had gone through a lot of criticism after her death. So these things are gendered, I would say. Gender does affect your choice of career and the acceptance of it in the society. That is why I decided that I would work on Sherpa women who are called Sherpani. They are in lesser number in adventure, in mountaineering per se, but they are as tough as the men are, because they are also born at those altitudes and they are as efficient. So right now I'm writing a research article on Sherpa women. Of course, my PhD is on the entire Sherpa community. So these two works will also be published in due time in the form of a book. And they would explore into those unsaid areas that we feel that we live by in our society. Because of our gender, are certain things less acceptable for us? Shall it be so? Whose responsibility actually the family is? To what extent we can utilize our potential as a human being and not as a man or as a woman? Shall women be barred just because of their gender from venturing into a particular thing? Whose responsibility it becomes to break these barriers? And how not only women can exert themselves, but men can become a facilitating factor. Rather than we seeing men as a barrier in our life, can they become our companions? Yes, they can. I have seen this. I've seen that when we talked these things to men, yes, their perception changes, because nobody has perhaps spoken to them in this manner earlier. And they also have been brought up in this society, which already has certain norms. So obviously these norms have embedded in their minds also. That is why I also utilize this power of communication with men. See, we are not antagonists, men and women. We're not competitors. We're not at the two different spectrums. No, we're not. We live together in the society. And that is why this communication between these two genders is also important. So these are some works that I'm right now doing, and I hope that it would very soon be in the public.
So we have two young girls who've been inspired by what you've said. There was Asila Jack who joined right in the beginning, and she said she's 15 years old and she would very much like to follow your path. And also from Facebook, a young 14-year-old called Sarah who asked that if she wants to be a mountaineer, how can she connect with you and how can she follow your path? So firstly, girls, order the book. Here's the link. I've put it on the chat. And we are going to be sharing this talk. It's firstly on our Lucknow Farmers Market Facebook page, which will be shared onto Tulika's page, as well as on our YouTube channel on Lucknow Farmers Market. And there's a lot of information that each one of you can get. I'll be sharing, Tulika, your Instagram page and your email address also with everyone. So there's so much that each of us can learn, because, apart from being an Air Force officer, here's a 28-year-old also who wants to be a mountaineer. Sorry, your screen has turned, Tulika. You have to just turn it. Yes.
I was trying to write my link actually.
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
I'll put your links, don't worry.
Yeah.
So we can bring onto the screen, we have, please, why don't you ask your question? There's someone here who wants to be a mountaineer and he'd like to ask you a question, he or she. We can't, if you could put your video on, we can bring them on the screen. Would you like to ask the question? Yes.
Hi, Tulika. This is Angelin, and You're a clear inspiration to me, seriously. I have no words what to say, but you have inspired me a lot in the past minutes. I really wanted to be a mountaineer. I would love to get your guidance and advices. Because I'm an young entrepreneur too. I led a company named Edzo, which is a e-learning platform for women. So it's just 3 months since I started this company, and I'm already into it. So this is also something for women empowerment. So I always believe that women empowerment is not about winning men, but winning themselves. I really wanted to hear something from you on this part. I would love to get your guidance on mountaineering.
I thank you, Angelina. I'm really glad that my words have resonated in your heart. So in a way, we are already connected now. I have given my link, the Instagram link over there in the chat. It is Toolika_40. So I would repeat it over here. It's TOOLIKA, Toolika_1414. So you can get connected to me over there, and we will talk about you getting into mountaineering in detail over there. And yes, absolutely right. It is about winning ourselves and not somebody else. Now, this is what all the great personalities of this world have said. Now, Swami Vivekananda, recently we had his Jayanti. We had his birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda. Even he said this. This is the gist of Indian philosophy, as well as I would say the philosophy of all the religions. Look within, empower yourself from within, conquer your own fears. And that is why I have written the name of this book, Beyond That Wall. The walls are most of the times within us. If we can conquer those inner walls, the outer walls can already be climbed, I think. So really very glad to, connected with you. And I look forward to remaining in connection all through my life.
Great. And we have also a question from Anuradha Goyal to say one of the questions that I also had for you. What's next after this? What are your future plans?
Well, yes. Apart from the work that I have already told about, the writing part, my future plan in various fields is that in the terms of climbing, there are many more mountains that, yes, I want to climb still. One 8,000-meter peak is Mount Choyu, which is in Nepal. It is the 6th highest mountain of the world, and it falls in the death zone. So it's a difficult peak, of course. There are 14 peaks in this entire world who fall in the death zone. So they are the most treacherous peaks. I want to climb, again, one of them. The Mount Everest is the highest, of course. In addition to that, I also want to climb the highest volcano of the world. I've already climbed Asia's highest volcano, and I had the pleasure to be the first Indian woman to do so. But now my sight is at the highest volcano of the world, which is in South America. In terms of public speaking, see, I want to join as many people as I can. I want my voice and these thoughts to reach as many people as I can, not only while I'm alive, but perhaps a long, long time after I'm gone from this world. So why? Because you empower me, I empower you. I believe in connection. I do not believe in this one-way monologue. Recently, we were connected with one of the audience, Angeline, and she has already given me that warmth, that human warmth. She has already enriched my evening and my rest of the life. So this kind of a connection. And in the field of public speaking, United Nations is at my goal, because that is one nation where all the cultures of this world are represented. So United Nations, speaking at the United Nations is at my mind. Then writing, of course, writing would continue. What I want to do more is to reach out to more people by all the means. And I want to feel that inspiration. I want to feel that human power awakened in all of us. Because together we have a lot of problems in today's world, a lot of challenges which are man-made. And I want human society to come together to take on them. One is, we talk a lot about women empowerment, but as we were having this discussion, it's not about just women being empowered. It's about a harmonious coexistence where a person gets equal opportunities irrespective of the gender. So these are certain areas that I'm working about. Somebody had asked about this book also. Again, email already you have written. This book, if you want to get, you can write me an email. I would send you an author signed copy.
And I've also shared the link on Instagram and Tulika's email address and her contact on email. But people also want to know about joining the Air Force. They have certain questions. So what you can also go and do is, you can go and put questions on the message if you'd like to connect anyone, Tulika. If they, as women joining the Air Force, is there a last message that you would like to give to our listeners?
Yes, the career in Indian Air Force, I would say there was a question, career opportunities in Air Force for a bio student. So I would say I myself was a bio student when I had joined forces. So I had exactly done geology, botany, and chemistry graduation. And after that, I went into forces. That's a different story that later on I did my master's in history and I did my net in history. And now I'm doing PhD on this. So that's a different story. I'm a mixture of both science and art streams. But being a bio student, you can join in the ground duty forces. And I had joined. The ground duty forces means administration branch, logistics, and there is this education, administration, logistics, education. So there are a lot of opportunities for the ground duty officers also.
Thank you so much, Tulika. You have shown such amazing courage and persistence, I think, in everything you've done. And you have really, gone a long way in breaking stereotypes. You are one of those iconic people, that really, I think, all our youth and all of us can really look up to. And we need so many more people like you so that people can actually stretch the boundaries of what they want to do and make their dreams actually their reality. The fact that you had such complete faith in what your abilities were and what you wanted to do and how you pushed yourself to the limit to achieve what you have. So you've left your mark not only on the highest mountain on the world, but on our hearts and minds too. It's been such a pleasure having you here today. And thank you so much. What a powerful speaker and a message you have for everyone. Thank you so much.
There's one thing which I would like to say. There are a lot of challenges, a lot of struggle, obstacles. But if I say it in Hindi, जो लोग मुश्किलों को मुसीबतों की तरह नहीं देखते बल्कि अवसरों की तरह देखते हैं, वही इस दुनिया में अपने कुछ काम अचीव कर सकते हैं, हासिल कर सकते हैं, और वही जैसे आपने कहा कि एक मार्क छोड़ सकते हैं. So it's about our perception. If we think it is an opportunity, we can turn a challenge into an opportunity and we can achieve a lot of things. So that's the message I would like to leave with, that whatever is coming in front of you, it's up to you, whether you see it as a musibat or mauka. It is an adversity or an opportunity. And thank you so much. I would like to put in a word for the Lucknow Farmers Market also, ma'am. I have interacted with you about this and I'm totally impressed with this concept, what you are trying to do at the ground level, because we need people like you who are doing this incredible contribution in the sustainable ecosystem. Now, if we talk about wealth, there is another concept attached to it, and that is equitable distribution of wealth. If it is not equally distributed, it is not sustainable. And we have all seen that sustainability is required. Mountains taught me this. If you go very fast, you cannot go very long. You got to be in harmony with your strength. So this pace is required. This coexistence with everything is required. That is what you're trying to do, the Lucknow Farmers Market. It is bringing farmers directly in touch with the buyers, the consumers. So that's a really wonderful work you're doing. I'm really impressed and I'm glad that people like you are venturing into it. That's a great step you have taken now. I would love to be associated with it all my life. Kudos to you. You are an inspiration in yourself. Thank you so much for having me on this platform today. It was really lovely talking to everybody over there.
Thank you so much, Tulika, and thank you to our, all our team and to our listeners for always being here. I think it's a revolution that all of us have to, uh, you know, to make sure that we have a better today. First, we used to say that, we have to ensure we have a better tomorrow. But the kind of changes that we are seeing in the climate, in our food, we have to actually ensure we have a better today. So let's all join hands together and ensure that we have a sustainable way of life. And we have our online platform, lucknowfarmersmarket.com. Do go and have a look. We have organic and natural products, services. You can go and visit farms and, just connect with us in any way that you're interested in. And we're really excited that Tulika is also going to be part of our advisory body. And we just encourage people to, join hands with us so that all of us can together make a difference. Thank you for a wonderful Saturday evening and look forward to more interactions.
Great. Jai Hind. Namaskar.
Jai Hind. Thank you, and so many of our friends who are here. It's great to see you all.